And with that, the delegates here in Calgary are off for a little break, a couple of hours away now from the speech from Pierre Poilievre, the speech that will set up the leadership review and vote later this evening. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Thank you for staying with us as CPAC brings you special coverage of the 2026 Conservative National Convention. And joining me right now is Ben Woodfinden, former Director of Communications for Pierre Poilievre. Ben, thank you for being here.
Yeah, anyone that works on the Hill knows how much time he's been watching CPAC. So I think it's the first-time caller. What's the saying? First-time listener,
long-time listener, first-time caller. But I'm really glad you're here. So thank you for being here. And as I said, you were Poilievre's former Director of Communications. Yep. And so this speech that he's going to give tonight, it really is the first opportunity for members of this party to kind of give a yay or a nay, not only on the performance during the last election, but also the leadership of this party going forward. How important is this speech for Pierre Poilievre?
Look, I think, so he's obviously speaking right before the vote, and this vote's important. He wants to get the strongest result he can, so that speech is right before. It's going to be fire up people in the room, so that matters. But I also think it matters because I think with anyone who watches the news knows there's a lot going on these days, and I think this is a good opportunity for him to basically get a national kind of, it'll be being played on the networks all weekend, this kind of stuff. So it's a good opportunity to just kind of deliver a speech, not just to this room, but also to a wider audience. And I think that's what you'll see from the speech tonight. Is you'll see something that's totally a speech for a Conservative audience, but I think you'll also see a speech from a guy that wants to be seen as a Prime Minister in waiting. So,
okay, if that's what he wants to do, what's the message? If you were to advise him, what's the message he needs to get across at this moment in time? What do you think we need to hear in that speech?
Look, I think we need to, and we've heard this a lot in the room already. The result was, well, you've heard these 100 times from people, but the most votes Conservative ever got, largest share of the votes in the Brian Mulroney. That's all true, and it's a foundation, but it wasn't enough, right? And ultimately, we have to get over the finish line. That is his goal. That should be his goal. So I think he needs to remind people of the success and the foundations that he's built, and I think he has a solid foundation there. They don't think it's going to take much to get it over that finish line. But I think the speech also will be a reminder that after this we get back to after this weekend we get back to normal politics and get back to the world and everything going on. And I think people are going to want to see kind of a forward-looking message there, and they want to see what's coming after this. And look, I think Poilievre has been a relentless fighter on. I kind of call him a tribune. Like the kinds of issues he champions: housing costs, affordability, crime, inflation, grocery prices. These kinds of things. These affect, as much as they might not dominate the headlines every single day. These are the number one issues for so many people. And if you can't put food on your table and you can't afford to buy a house, it's going to be a motivating issue for you. And I think, look, a lot of people put their hope in him that he can do something about that. And people are going to want to hear that and see that he is still that person. But yeah, I also think he's going to want to look like a Prime Minister in waiting, like I keep saying. So I think you're going to see a bigger part of that too will be aimed at showcasing himself as that Prime Minister. So that means not just part of it. Lots of people like to talk about kind of temperament and tone, but I think it's actually much more about just showing the kind of. I can confirm, having worked with him for a few years, that he's extremely smart and extremely thoughtful. And I think in his response to the Prime Minister's speech a few weeks ago in Davos, he gave a very serious and thoughtful response, and he took a few days to do that because he wanted to think about it. And I think that version of Pierre is people want to see more of that too, and I think you'll see some of that tonight.
Mm-hmm. It's been said, and I'm sure you've heard it, that Pierre Poilievre has proven himself a very effective opposition leader, but he's yet to cast himself in the role of Prime Minister. You hint at a few things there. What does need to change? What needs tweaking? If you're close to getting over the finish line, what's the missing ingredient?
Well, look, I think there's a few different things. Like I said, I'm one of the people that do not. I don't want him. He can't, and he shouldn't change who he is. He is who he is. The person you see on screen is the person he is. And I say that's a compliment, not as an insult to him. He's also the hardest working guy. He's hard to work for because he's the hardest working guy you'll ever meet. And again, that's a compliment. It's a testament to his worldview and how hard he wants to work for the people that vote for him. I think, look, partially what I don't. To be clear, I'm not saying you'll see this in the speech, but I think one of the challenges is I think you plan for the worst, you hope for the best. I think you got to if you're in that Conservative campaign, whenever it comes, you got to work on the assumption it's a two-party race. So that means we got 41.3 something like that % of the vote. You probably need a few more. I think Pierre's actually said publicly we need a million more votes. So you got to figure out where those votes are going to come from, and does it mean? I call the unique coalition that he built. I refer to it as kind of a coalition of the locked out, people that the promise of this country is fading or it's faded. Do you expand that coalition more? I think there's plenty more votes to be gained there. Do you try and reach out to other voters that maybe don't, older voters that, especially older men, old boomer men that we used to be a safe conservative voting bloc that we're not at the last election, right? So I think you're going to have something for a bit of everyone. And my view on kind of the strategy they should take is it's not about targeting one group or the other. It's just about speaking to as many people as you can, doing as much media as you can, reaching every audience in every possible venue. And I think you've actually seen since the election he's doing a lot more different venues and kinds of media. He's going on CBC, he's doing these kinds of things he wasn't doing when I was there, for example. So I think that's good, and I think that's progress. And I think these are the kinds of tweaks that are needed. Like I said, I don't think he needs a radical change. I think he needs to hold what he has and just find a way to just add a little bit more to that.
Is it a spent force, though? He's been very consistent in his messaging ever since he became leader, and it was expected it would deliver him to the Prime Minister's office until the leadership change on the Liberal side. All those chapters of political history happening in quick succession of each other within a year. Mm-hmm. Is his part of that tale now done? Does he still have relevance going forward?
I think he does, and the reason for that is, look, I think the kind of, I'm being repetitive here, but the housing costs, crime, now a lot of talk about food prices. These issues haven't gone anywhere. They might not dominate the headlines every single day, but they are. I think these issues are actually getting worse, not better in many ways. And as long as those issues are there, and as long as there is a large group of people in this country who, fundamentally, for whom the status quo doesn't work, that want to see big change. I think that message is not just that it continues. I think it actually resonates even more in some ways because maybe we wave a magic wand tomorrow and all these issues are gone and we fix all these problems. And yeah, sure, the message might not, but that's not what happened. That's not what's happened, right? These issues are still real issues for millions and millions and millions of Canadians. So he's not going to stop talking about them because if he stops hearing people talking about them, he might stop talking about them. As long as he's hearing these issues when he talks to normal people, he's never going to stop talking about them, and nor should he.
The polls seem to indicate, though, that even amongst Canadians who identify themselves as conservative voters, not a majority, it's a minority, but it's still a significant number, one in five, are okay with Mark Carney's performance as Prime Minister. How much of a problem is that going to be for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party?
Look, it's not ideal, obviously, and the Prime Minister's approval ratings are still pretty good. I still think it's probably some sort of honeymoon period, and I think the biggest challenge for the Prime Minister, and we're in a moment where I think there's a lot of, and the Conservatives have said they're willing to work with the government on stuff that puts the country first. I think that's good, and that should continue. When the Conservatives and Liberals propose ideas, they can both agree on, they should work together on them, and that's what's going to happen. But look, I think the biggest challenge for the Prime Minister is that he's promised a lot of stuff. He said he's going to do a lot of big things, and even if he's doing something, saying he wants to do certain things that he wants to build more homes, he wants to build pipelines, things like this. That's good. That's progress. I want all our politicians to do the right thing. So I'm glad to see Liberals seeing the light on these things, but. They've made big promises, and at some point he's going to have to deliver on these promises, right? And if he doesn't, there's a very effective leader waiting in the wings to make sure to point that out. And ultimately, I think part of what Poilievre's going to have to sell, and I think he's trying, is that these guys. It's you see this, you've seen this in recent weeks, but it's the words are good, the rhetoric's good, but action matters. Words need to be followed with real action and real progress. And I think he's going to continue to hold their feet to the proverbial fire on this. And I think ultimately, look, if the Prime Minister delivers everything he says he's going to deliver, he's probably in pretty good shape. But it's easier said than done. And I think basically that will be the more time goes on, the more people will basically run out of patience with that. And I think then they'll be looking that lots of people still looking at Poilievre as a guy that can deliver on this. But I think he becomes the guy that promises. Okay, they had the words are nice. I'm the guy of action. I'm the guy that's actually going to get this done.
Okay. Well, we watch for the speech this evening, see what words are shared. Ben, really appreciate the time. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And that is Ben Woodfinden. And, of course, we'll continue the coverage here as we bring you everything that's coming to us here at the Conservative National Convention in Calgary. And to that, I want to throw now to my colleague, Andrew Thomson, who's out in the convention hall right now speaking to delegates and MPs. Andrew, over to you.
Rob Batherson is a former president of the Conservative Party of Canada. He was also a candidate in Nova Scotia in the last federal election. Rob, good to see you.
Great to be here.
So tell me what you think the Conservative Party of Canada needs to accomplish at this convention at this moment.
Well, this is my 16th national convention since 1993, every convention takes on a bit of a life of its own. We've got standing items on the agenda, our policy debates, our constitutional debates, national council elections in many of the jurisdictions, and of course the leadership review, which is the first time since 2005 that the party has voted on the leader. We did it in Montreal with Stephen Harper. Now we're doing it in Calgary in 2026 with Pierre Poilievre.
So what are you looking for as Pierre Poilievre speaks to the convention in terms of the message that he's going to need to send to delegates, at least the delegates who are maybe undecided on how they want to vote?
Well, at the Quebec City Convention, you may recall that none other than Brian Mulroney said that Pierre's 2023 convention speech was the best one that he had heard going all the way back to the Right Honourable John George Diefenbaker. So I think we're looking forward to a really powerful speech on Friday night. And I think Pierre Poilievre is going to show a vision of hope. Not only being a fighter for Canadians, a fighter on the issues that matter of cost of living, but providing a hopeful message for all Canadians to rally behind.
And I see you've got the Pierre Poilievre button on your coat. In terms of his support, do you see a number that he needs to reach as a benchmark to continue on?
Well, the great thing is delegates will vote, will get a number, and then ultimately people will debate afterwards how big it was or not. Based on all the conversations I'm having with delegates today and through the weekend, I'm expecting an extremely strong vote of confidence in Pierre Poilievre's leadership. In Halifax West, we have a full slate of 12 delegates. I am the only delegate who has attended a previous convention. All of our delegates are relatively new to the party. It's their first convention. And one of the reasons that these new people have gotten involved in the Conservative Party of Canada is because they are energized by Pierre Poilievre's leadership.
Okay, I do want to ask you as a former party president and as a former candidate to talk a bit about the debate that's going to be happening, because on the constitutional side, a lot of the resolutions are dealing with this desire by ridings to get some more power over the candidate nomination process. What do you make of all that?
It's not new. We debate these issues around how we govern ourselves as a party at every national convention. At every convention after an election, we always have discussions around candidate nomination. What is the right balance in terms of governance from National Council, Conservative Party Canada, party leadership? So we're doing it again, once more with feeling, and we'll have good debate, good conversation, and we'll see what gets through the workshops on Friday, and then what advances to the main plenary on Saturday, and then what gets approved there. But conversations like this aren't new. They may be new to the new delegates who are attending, but they're not new to people like me who've been around for perhaps longer than is necessary.
Okay, Rob Batherson, really appreciate your time. Thanks for this.
Thanks, Andrew.
Du discours de Pierre Poilievre ici à Calgary au Centre BMO devant les quelques 2500 délégués qui sont rassemblés ici pour décider non seulement de son avenir politique mais bien de celui du parti. Il y aura également une allocution prononcée par son épouse en amont du discours de M. Poilievre. Plus tôt cet après-midi, j'ai eu la chance de m'entretenir avec Pierre Paul-Hus, le lieutenant politique pour le Québec du Parti conservateur. Et nous avons parlé justement de ses attentes par rapport à ce discours de M. Poilievre, mais aussi de la direction que le chef conservateur voudra peut-être prendre pour non seulement rallier ses troupes ici à Calgary et partout ailleurs au pays, mais aussi pour rallier d'autres Canadiens pour, en fait, améliorer les chances du Parti conservateur de se faire élire aux prochaines élections. Je vous invite à écouter cet échange avec Pierre Paul-Hus. Alors, pour discuter de l'importance de ce moment pour Pierre Poilievre, je reçois Pierre Paul-Hus, lieutenant politique pour le Québec du Parti conservateur. Monsieur Paul-Hus, bonsoir, bonsoir.
Bonjour.
Alors, je le mentionnais, ce discours tant entendu de Pierre Poilievre, c'est vraiment son occasion de se présenter à la fois à la base du parti, mais aussi au reste de l'électorat. Comment est-ce que vous pensez qu'il va justement se présenter ce soir?
Bonne question. J'ai pas idée de ce que M. Poilievre va dire, mais en même temps, je pense que l'important, c'est les gens qui votent pour lui aujourd'hui. Donc, on parle à des délégués, des membres du Parti conservateur, des gens qui ont décidé d'être délégués, de venir ici à Calgary. Puis ça, c'est important que ces gens-là se décident s'ils donnent leur appui ou non à M. Poilievre. Le discours peut avoir une portée plus globale, mais en même temps, c'est les gens qui sont devant lui ce soir qui vont décider.
Oui, justement, parce que c'est pas forcément gagné non plus. On parle de plus en plus de la barre que M. Poilievre doit atteindre et le chiffre qu'on doit, qui semble se profiler, c'est ce 84% atteint par Stephen Harper en 2005 à la suite de l'effet électoral en 2004. Quel chiffre est-ce que vous avez en tête?
Ça, c'est la question qui tue.
Ouais.
Honnêtement, on ne veut pas répondre à cette question-là parce que si je vous disais, ça prend entre 70 ou 80 ou 80 90, à un moment donné, moi, je ne peux pas décider pour lui. M. Poilievre va décider lui-même selon le résultat de ce qu'il va faire avec. On n'a pas une norme qui dit que ça prend minimum 80 ou minimum 75 pour être acceptable. Ça, c'est chaque chef dans des occasions, dans d'autres occasions qu'on a eues dans le pays, au niveau provincial ou fédéral. C'est les chefs qui décident selon le résultat, donc je lui laisse ça.
Mais est-ce que ça doit être dans les 80?
Honnêtement, on souhaite tous avoir le maximum, bien évidemment. Mais si jamais il y a 75 et qu'il est satisfait de ça, ça lui appartient.
Est-ce que vous et vos collègues, est-ce que vous craignez qu'il y ait un scénario où ça ne soit pas dans les 80?
J'ai hâte de voir. Honnêtement, moi, ce que je vois, le feeling du groupe depuis j'ai passé la journée d'hier avec les délégués. Hier soir, une suite du Québec, on avait dit tous les délégués du Québec. Puis c'était très positif. On regarde les gens qui se promènent avec un macaron, j'appuie Pierre, énormément de gens. Donc, j'ai vraiment hâte de voir si le résultat n'est pas assez élevé, ça va être surprenant.
Oui, je dis 80, ça pourrait bien sûr être dans les 90 aussi, bien évidemment. Certainement, on le sait que le Parti conservateur a très bien performé quand même lors des dernières élections. 41,3% des voix récoltées, 144 députés conservateurs élus aux communes, quand même pas suffisant pour remporter l'élection. Vous avez une base qui est hyper motivée, consolidée, mais on sait qu'il y a plusieurs sondages, pas seulement un, il y a vraiment plusieurs sondages qui laissent entendre que dans le reste de l'électorat, il y a quand même des inquiétudes par rapport au leadership de M. Poilievre. Même parmi, en fait, les conservateurs accessibles, ces voteurs que le parti doit aller chercher pour pouvoir faire des gains, seulement 8% des électeurs accessibles au Parti conservateur disent que M. Poilievre, 8% disent que M. Poilievre reflète le mieux leurs valeurs, alors que 31% disent que ce serait plutôt Mark Carney. Pourquoi est-ce que le Parti conservateur croit toujours que M. Poilievre est le meilleur chef, celui qui est mieux à même de mener le parti à une victoire?
Premièrement, la dernière élection, oui, on était meneur vraiment en avant, puis est arrivé l'histoire Donald Trump qui est arrivé dans le décor, M. Carney qui est arrivé. Et il y a eu une anxiété énorme. Moi, ma campagne électorale, les 3 premières semaines, on me parlait juste de Donald Trump. Puis là, il y a un électorat plus âgé qui avait vraiment un stress énorme. Même au Québec, il ne faut pas oublier que comme les conservateurs, vous l'avez dit, on a eu un score, un record pour notre parti. Mais il reste que là, des électeurs du Bloc ont abandonné le Bloc pour aller avec M. Carney parce que là, c'était vraiment une question d'un événement particulier.
Le NPD aussi a
Et le NPD qui ont appuyé les libéraux pendant 4 ans sont ramassés à perdre plus que la moitié de leur caucus. Là. Donc, ces facteurs-là sont vraiment circonstanciels. Et pour le futur, nous, Pierre Poilievre, il garde son approche de dire les problèmes domestiques du Canada, le coût de la vie, l'inflation alimentaire, on parle toujours de ça parce que c'est ce qui est dans la vie de tous les jours. Là, actuellement, M. Carney a été élu en avril avec la prétention de pouvoir régler les problèmes avec Donald Trump. Rien qui a été réglé. Les tarifs ont été doublés. M. Carney se promène, fait le tour du monde en disant qu'il fait des accords partout, mais c'est juste des discussions. Il n'y a pas vraiment d'accord formel. Donc, actuellement, il y a un vide. Il n'y a pas vraiment de solutions qui ont été apportées concrètement, à part une image que ça va mieux. Mais dans les faits, c'est pas ça. Donc, Pierre Poilievre, lui, reste les 2 pieds sur terre. Il dit là, c'est pas le temps de faire le tour du monde, c'est le temps de s'occuper des problèmes domestiques. Et c'est pour ça que de changer de chef pour dire quoi? Les conservateurs, on pense qu'il y a le bon message. C'est ça qu'on veut faire pour les citoyens.
Mm-hmm. En même temps, vous avez dit que c'est circonstanciel, mais on sait que Donald Trump s'ingère constamment. Il marque l'actualité vraiment à chaque jour. Dans quelle mesure est-ce que ça pose problème pour le Parti conservateur, alors que vous le mentionnez, surtout si on parle des électeurs plus âgés, ils cherchent vraiment la stabilité, la sécurité. Ils se rangent derrière, pour l'instant, Mark Carney. Est-ce que ça pose problème pour M. Poilievre en particulier de vraiment pouvoir opposer, parce que c'est bien sûr le rôle de l'opposition, mais sans toutefois y aller trop loin?
C'est sûr qu'à un moment donné, il y a des personnes qui ont plus d'anxiété puis vont se laisser rassurer par M. Carney. Mais de l'autre côté, ce qu'on parle le moins, c'est les jeunes. On a vraiment les jeunes 18-34 ans. On a, même au Québec, on donne leur appui aux conservateurs, à Pierre Poilievre. Et ça, c'est un phénomène qu'on n'avait pas. Moi, ça fait depuis 2008, j'étais avec le Parti conservateur. Et à l'époque, les jeunes, c'était vraiment loin de nous. Là, aujourd'hui, c'est le contraire. Donc, Pierre Poilievre est allé chercher les plus jeunes, donner de l'espoir aux jeunes. Et ça, c'est le facteur qui peut être déterminant pour une prochaine campagne, d'avoir les jeunes qui nous supportent, qui vont voter. Ça peut être un facteur positif pour M. Poilievre et pour le Parti conservateur.
Tout à fait. Juste en terminant, votre parti a quand même vu 2 députés passer au camp des libéraux l'automne dernier. Il y a un autre député, évidemment, qui a annoncé qu'il va siéger en tant qu'indépendant avant de quitter la vie politique au printemps. Est-ce que vous êtes absolument certain qu'à la suite de l'issue de ce vote, on ne va voir aucun autre député transfuge?
Je ne peux pas me prononcer. Regardez, le meilleur exemple, c'est M. Marc, qui est le deuxième transfuge, qui était à notre partie de Noël, qui n'a pas payé sa facture en passant. Il nous doit encore 100 $. Puis, qui, le lendemain, a traversé avec les libéraux. Donc, on ne l'a jamais vu venir. Ce monsieur-là, 24 heures avant, il était avec nous autres de bonne humeur. Puis, le lendemain, donc, je peux pas savoir. Je ne suis pas dans la tête des autres. Là. Mais écoutez, on essaie de, comme je disais, en tant que caucus ce matin, on travaille tous dans le même sens. M. Poilievre nous a fait un beau discours très clair, puis les gens l'appuyaient. On verra.
Pierre Paul-Hus, on va devoir s'arrêter là-dessus. Merci encore une fois d'avoir été avec nous.
Merci, ça fait plaisir.
Pendant ce temps, mon collègue Rémi d'Authier continue d'échanger avec les délégués rassemblés ici à Calgary pour décider de l'avenir du chef, Pierre Poilievre, et bien sûr du parti également, de prendre le pouls sur ce qu'il pense de la direction du Parti conservateur sous son leadership. Alors là-dessus, Rémi, à toi.
M. Plourde, alors vous êtes délégué du Québec ici. Ce n'est pas votre première convention. La journée est chargée, très technique, beaucoup de résolutions, mais on sent que tout le monde a quand même les yeux rivés sur ce qui va avoir lieu en fin de journée avec le discours de M. Poilievre. Oui, il y a les sondages, oui, il y a plein de choses qui se disent dans les médias, mais pour vous, en tant que délégué, c'est quoi le message que vous aimeriez entendre, que vous estimez qui doit être porté par votre chef ce soir?
Bien, il y a 2 volets. Le premier volet, c'est que notre chef puisse vraiment parler des vraies préoccupations. Rappeler, parce que c'est beau, là, le grand dérangement autour, là, au sud, à Davos, c'est correct, là, mais en même temps, il faut quand même regarder les vraies préoccupations. Hein? Payer notre hypothèque, payer le sac d'épicerie. Donc, tout ça, là, c'est primordial. Il faut quand même garder les 2 pieds sur terre. Ça, je m'attends à ça de Pierre Poilievre et il le livre toujours. Mais je vous ai parlé d'entrée de jeu, toutes les questions de dérangement. Il faut quand même montrer notre alternative. On est le gouvernement en attente. Moi, je crois que Pierre Poilievre est le premier ministre en attente et c'est ce qu'il doit démontrer. Il n'a pas à me convaincre moi, mais il aura à convaincre, j'imagine, d'autres délégués qui, eux, peut-être s'attendent ça. Puis aussi le grand public, ceux qui nous regardent, qui sont peut-être plus sûrs quand ils regardent, quand ils voient là, comment les États-Unis réagissent face à Mark Carney. Ils s'attendent à voir comment les conservateurs, eux, vont réagir à ça. Et puis, donc, c'est l'occasion à M. Poilievre de démontrer que c'est lui qui aurait dû être le premier ministre et qui est le prochain premier ministre.
Et justement, il y a le vote de confiance. Donc, bien sûr, M. Poilievre doit s'adresser aux délégués qui, peut-être pas comme vous, mais comme d'autres, pourraient douter de son leadership. Mais est-ce que son discours, selon vous, va être plus orienté vers les délégués ou plus vers les Canadiens qui ne sont pas dans la salle?
Bien, écoutez, il n'y a pas le choix de s'adresser aux délégués. Il est dans une convention du Parti conservateur. Donc, moi, je m'attends qu'il parle aux délégués d'abord. Mais, dans un autre temps, bien, les médias sont ici. Donc, aussi, tous les yeux des Canadiens, de beaucoup de Canadiens, sont ici. Des médias comme vous sont ici. Donc, il devra aussi s'adresser en partie aux Canadiens, aux délégués, mais aussi aux Canadiens. Puis, donc,
pensez-vous que le même message peut résonner tant chez les délégués que les Canadiens, alors qu'on sait que, bon, souvent les délégués sont un peu plus militants, tout ça. Pensez-vous que le même message va être capable d'avoir le même écho?
Bien, il le faut. Comme leader, c'est son travail d'être capable de mener son message des délégués, des membres du parti, aux Canadiens. Puis si on veut croire, puis on veut devenir un gouvernement, c'est le travail de notre leader, puis moi, je m'attends à ce qu'il puisse le faire adéquatement, ce travail-là.
On va regarder ce discours comme vous allez le faire. Alors, merci beaucoup pour vos commentaires, M. Plourde.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, well, let's continue our coverage right now of the Conservative National Convention. Happy to have with me right now Andrew Scheer, the Conservative House Leader, today, not in Ottawa, but in Calgary with us. Andrew, good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Well, great to be on the show again.
Listen, let's talk a little bit about what's evolved today, because I think there's really 2 buckets here, right? On the one hand, it's the first post-mort that delegates, party members can have en masse about the last federal election. And then as the evening progresses, it will be about the leadership of Pierre Poilievre. So let's go back first and foremost, the last election? Because I've been hearing still some unhappiness about what happened in April. What do you think the party needs to learn out of that last campaign?
Well, we have to learn from, first of all, it's essential that we decide who we're going to listen to. And I am keenly interested in listening to candidates, campaign managers, volunteers, donors, people who want our party to succeed. I'm less interested in listening to people who have never voted for our party or who play, the members of the pundit class who cheerlead for Liberals. And I don't really want to listen to what their prescriptions are, because they tend to be, we need to be less conservative. And if anything has borne to be true in the last few years, is that conservatives were right. We were right about the carbon tax. We were right about flooding the streets with harmful drugs. We were right about chasing away investment in our oil and gas sector, for example. So part of it is, yes, let's all listen to each other and find out what worked. We don't want to abandon things that actually helped us get historic high votes. The messaging, the campaign tools, a fantastic and inspirational message from Pierre allowed us to secure the highest vote total in modern conservative history. We picked up seats all across the country in places that had never voted conservative before. Obviously, when you don't win, you have to find out why, and you have to listen to people and say, okay, here's my experience. Here's what I was getting at the doors in my community. So that's happening as we speak. It's been happening in breakout sessions. It's been happening since the last election. Our leader has consulted with candidates and MPs and our donor and volunteer base. So I think what you're going to hear tonight in Pierre's speech is kind of the path forward. Okay, we've come together, we're deciding on policies, and we're hearing from party officials. What do we do now, and how do we take this to the next level? Build on that success, but finish the job next election.
Okay, dig into that for me then. When you say build to the next level, I'm thinking right now at the most recent polling from Abacus data, right? Pierre Poilievre, massive support amongst the conservative base. Outside of the conservative base, though, obviously there's work for the party to do to bring them over. So if you say what you've presented in terms of conservative principles is essentially what defines this party, how do you build beyond that without alienating or perhaps foregoing building more a voter base for your party?
Well, that's an excellent question, because we are the only party that is constantly and relentlessly focused on the cost of living issues that mean working families can't afford beef anymore, or young people who have given up on the dream of home ownership. So you're absolutely right. We can't lose that, because Pierre and our party was the voice for those often voiceless, hardworking Canadians, and that's a big part of why we had so much success. I'm sure you noticed in the last election we had a lot of people coming to conservative events who had never voted conservative before, maybe never voted before. Pierre's message brought that in. What do we need to do to show the next, 4 or 5% of Canadians, so because
it's about 1 million votes you need to draw over to secure government from what I've been hearing.
Well, I don't go through and with a fine tooth comb kind of seat models and projections, but there's clearly some work to do to highlight how the same policies that will make life more affordable here in Canada will help Canada respond to threats abroad. So I believe you're going to hear some of that tonight, and it's really about showing Canadians that it's conservative policies that will do both, that will strengthen Canada's position on the world stage, make us more resilient and autonomous, and able to withstand whatever comes out of whatever administrations around the world. But also, we can't forget that the hardship that Canadians are facing, the real day-to-day pain of housing prices, of crime, of grocery prices, these are all the direct result of Liberal policies, and they can only be undone by a conservative government. So kind of building of those two thoughts together. But, in our party, we don't like to talk about strategy. We just do it. I believe in the coming months you're going to see, and we've already seen it. Pierre Poilievre unveiled this past week in the House of Commons, the Conservative Canadian Sovereignty Act, which is all about kickstarting our economy, providing it with some real rocket fuel by cutting capital gains exemptions for people who reinvest in Canada. That's going to open up a whole new pool of capital for job creators and entrepreneurs, repealing liberal anti-development laws that get in the way of foreign investment, building things in Canada. So we can absolutely do both. We can speak to Canada's place in the world and dealing with those international challenges, while at the same time relentlessly providing people hope for restoring that promise of Canada where you can actually afford the basic necessities and still have a little bit left over to treat the kids and the rest of the family.
Yeah, but obviously you don't stand alone though, because there are conservative governments across this country, right, at the provincial level. And I'm thinking about right now the Ontario Conservative government, the one in Nova Scotia as well as Newfoundland and Labrador. In terms of expanding the base, are there any lessons to be learned from those provincial conservative parties, or is that not conservative enough for what you're trying to achieve here federally?
I'm not. I like to focus on the positives and be forward-facing. Obviously, we need to build, we need to grow, and we need to bring more people into our movement. And I believe that is going to be very much a part of Pierre's tone and message tonight about offering that hope and solution and finding those things that unite us. It's so easy to break down on the things that divide us. But you and I might disagree on 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 or 12 things. Well, I bet you we can find a lot of things we agree on. And if we had to work together on something, focusing on the things that unite us would make that a lot easier. And when we've have so much division in our country right now, divisions on ideological grounds, divisions on policy grounds, division on regional grounds. I mean, we have a revived separatist movement in Quebec and now one in Alberta, precisely because liberal policies imposing that Ottawa knows best approach has created this backlash in 2 significant regions of our country. So unity, coming together, working with conservatives of all stripes and bringing that message to a broader audience is absolutely going to be a part of the path forward.
Okay, part of the path forward. I'm wondering how much of it is also about the team, because I will be honest with you, when I've been walking around this convention, one common theme is I wish we were hearing more from the Conservative caucus. I wish we were seeing more of a government in waiting rather than just trying to sell Pierre Poilievre as a prime minister in waiting. What do you say to that?
We have a fantastic team. It's always a challenge in party politics to highlight so many fantastic people. The media focuses on the issues that they choose. We've got some fantastic MPs that are using new media, using their own social media platforms to tell the Conservative story, to highlight problems that the government's doing. So it's something that we're constantly doing. We have I would stack our shadow cabinet up against the Liberal cabinet any day of the week. We've got principled, hardworking.
But do you need to change anything operationally though, so that Canadians are better? Like, I understand what you're saying, but that's at the end of the day, that's niche. If you're just showing the one, the overall impression of a party that's ready to become government is something of a grander scale than just individual social media feeds.
No, as I mean, we do I can tell you there's many press releases that our shadow cabinet puts out that media doesn't pick up on. There's lots of times where our shadow ministers will walk out into the foyer and address the nation on important issues. Doesn't always make the 6 o'clock news. Believe me, I wish I could get bureau chiefs to highlight more of our Conservative team. If there are things that we need to, absolutely, there are always things that we can do internally to improve upon that, make sure that they're getting our wonderful team full of capable people are getting those opportunities and pushing more and more to get them in that limelight. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we have an inspirational leader with a fantastic message that is giving hope to so many people. He's brought our party to historic highs. Such a huge improvement on the last few elections that our party have run. It's thanks to his dedicated leadership, and I believe tonight, I don't want to give anything of the speech away.
Feel free.
No, we won't be doing that. We'll let the leader speak for himself and about charting the path forward. But I'm very excited for the speech tonight. I'm excited to be in the room as people kind of hear it and get inspired by that message.
Okay, Andrew Scheer, thank you for this. Thanks for the time in Calgary.
You bet. Thank you.
Kai Jassal is a delegate for Winnipeg South Centre. Kai, what do you want to hear from Pierre Poilievre when he gives that major speech tonight to delegates?
I'm excited for tonight's speech. I'm hoping to hear a lot about nation-building priorities, so energy infrastructure like pipelines, something like an East-West pipeline. We're in Alberta too, so national unity is important, talking about Alberta separatism. But more important than anything, I want to know his plan to win the next election, and that election could come early. We've heard a lot of rhetoric from Prime Minister Carney that is very reminiscent of where we were last year when we went into an early campaign. So I want to know how he plans to win, what he'll do differently in the next campaign so that we can end that with a strong national Conservative government.
Of course, a lot of Canadians are right now thinking about Canada's place in the world, especially when it comes to the United States. That's really been a big focus of federal politics. It was certainly a big focus of that campaign last year. What do you want to hear from Pierre Poilievre when it comes to those relationships, especially handling that cross-border relationship?
Yeah, well, I think Canada should be economically independent from the United States. I think that we should be able to refine our own oil, for example, rather than always ship it down east. And I think we should expand to other markets like Europe and maybe even Asia when it comes to our resources. Critical minerals are important too. I'm from Manitoba, and Port of Churchill is a big thing. And if that were to be opened up, it would provide a lot of economic opportunity to the far north of Manitoba and the far north of Canada.
I know you were telling me earlier you wouldn't say how you were voting in this leadership review, but what do you think the leader needs to say to convince delegates who might still be undecided if Pierre Poilievre is the right person to be taking them forward?
Well, it's what I just said, which is how he plans to win the next election. I expect him to fully win the leadership review. I think he'll probably win it with even north of 85, maybe even 90%. So I don't think he needs to be too concerned about that.
And what do you think the party needs to take away from how the last campaign was operated? Because a lot of what happens at these conventions is looking back, potentially changing the Constitution, potentially changing the party's policy declaration. So there's looking back at how the party ran that campaign. What lessons do you want to see when the next writ comes?
Well, it comes down to meeting Canadians where they're at. I think Canadians want senior leadership, like a senior statesman kind of leadership right now, given international conflicts. Canadians don't typically vote on international relations, but they like to see a prime minister that can kind of project that statesman energy, so I'm hoping that Pierre projects that tonight. And then when it comes down to platform, things like I said before, nation-building projects like energy infrastructure, becoming economically independent, I think those are the major issues.
Okay, Kai, thank you so much for this.
Thank you for this.
Étienne-Alexandre Beauregard, merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui.
Ça me fait plaisir, merci pour l'invitation.
Alors, j'aimerais d'abord commencer avec les résultats d'un dernier sondage qui a été publié par Abacus Data, selon lequel M. Poilievre continue d'obtenir ses meilleurs résultats parmi les jeunes Canadiens. Vous êtes une jeune figure du conservatisme québécois. Comment est-ce que vous expliquez son attrait?
Bien, je pense qu'en ce moment, il y a un phénomène plus large en Occident où les jeunes tendent à se tourner vers la droite. C'était le sujet d'ailleurs de mon dernier livre qui s'appelle Anti-civilisation, où ma théorie globale là-dessus un peu, c'est de dire que depuis les années 60, on a eu vraiment un mouvement qui mettait de l'avant ce qu'on peut appeler la déconstruction, avec une certaine vision de, disons, de la liberté, mais contre la communauté, contre la tradition, contre la nation, contre un peu les héritages qui font de nous qui on est. Et je pense que, comment dire, c'était facile à une certaine époque de dire qu'on pouvait se passer de ces ancrages-là, quand ceux qui le disaient avaient eux-mêmes les deux pieds dans une forme de tradition parce qu'ils l'avaient connue. J'ai l'impression qu'aujourd'hui, on arrive à l'époque un peu de l'effondrement de cette idéologie-là, parce qu'on arrive à une époque où les jeunes, par exemple comme moi je suis né en 2000, j'ai 25 ans, et ces jeunes-là regardent et disent « OK, mais moi j'arrive à l'âge où je me demande dans quelle société je m'inscris, à quelle nation j'appartiens, comment est-ce que je devrais mener une bonne vie ?» Et quand on veut pas en fait nous donner les réponses, quand la seule chose qu'on a à nous dire c'est trouve ta liberté ou déconstruis la société dans laquelle tu te trouves, ben on atteint une certaine limite parce qu'on veut trouver des repères, on veut trouver quelque chose de solide pour justement bâtir notre vie parce qu'on est à cette époque-là. Puis je pense que ce mouvement-là vers les conservateurs, il rejoint ça. C'est quelque chose de plus philosophique, mais je pense que le mouvement qu'on voit en ce moment autour de Pierre Poilievre s'inscrit certainement là-dedans. Oui.
Donc c'est pas seulement lors des questions matérielles, parce que vous évoquez cette idée de bâtir notre vie. Évidemment, on pense à toutes les inquiétudes par rapport au coût de la vie, au logement. Vous dites que ça va beaucoup plus loin que ça, en fait.
Moi, je pense que ça va plus loin. Cela dit, cette question-là du coût de la vie, elle est réelle. Puis pour moi, je pense que c'est plus qu'une question matérielle, cela dit, puis je vais expliquer pourquoi. Parce que moi, je vois des gens autour de moi, justement, qui arrivent à une époque où, comment dire, on les pousse à aller à l'université de plus en plus longtemps. On les pousse justement à ne pas avoir de revenus, donc pendant de plus en plus longtemps. Mais on s'entend, notre horloge, elle atteint quand même un certain point. On se dit, OK, mais là, j'arrive au point où j'aimerais ça arriver dans l'âge adulte. Mais là, pourquoi est-ce que mes amis, par exemple, sont forcés de rester chez leurs parents? Pourquoi est-ce qu'ils n'ont pas les moyens, notamment, de s'acheter une maison? Pourquoi est-ce qu'ils n'ont pas les emplois stables qu'on leur avait promis pourtant s'ils allaient étudier longtemps? Puis je pense que cette espèce de peut-être frustration générationnelle-là, qui est très compréhensible, c'est pas juste combien d'argent est-ce que j'ai dans ma poche à la fin de la journée. C'est aussi de dire, OK, là, j'arrive au moment où je veux commencer ma vie, mais j'ai l'impression que les cartes sont un peu contre moi, puis je sais pas comment attaquer ça. Fait que je pense que là-dessus, certainement, M. Poilievre, il est capable de parler à ça. Puis il faut dire aussi qu'il y a un style de communication sur les médias sociaux. Donc, chez les jeunes, je pense qu'ils s'informent davantage sur ces plateformes-là. C'est facile un peu de comprendre pourquoi il y a une facilité à les rejoindre.
J'ai évoqué le sondage d'Abacus Data, mais il y a aussi d'autres sondages qui suggèrent qu'il y aurait peut-être une perte de vitesse chez M. Poilievre parmi ce même groupe d'électeurs. Il y avait un sondage d'Angus Reid selon lequel 63% des jeunes électeurs âgés entre 18 et 34 ans ont une perception négative à l'égard de M. Poilievre. Donc, c'est quand même 63% et ça serait un renversement notable par rapport au sondage précédent. Avez-vous, vous, l'impression que M. Poilievre peine plus difficilement ces temps-ci à se faire entendre, qu'il y aurait que son message passe plus difficilement?
Bien, je pense que, comme observateur, quand même, après l'élection, on voit que c'est sûr que M. Carney a plus d'attention, a un effet de nouveauté aussi qui fait que peut-être certains électeurs se tournent vers lui. Après, moi, quand je regarde, notamment au Québec, je pense souvent les dynamiques politiques au Québec peuvent être un peu différentes du reste du Canada, mais d'une manière assez intéressante, cet attrait-là du Parti conservateur pour les jeunes, il se maintient malgré tout. Et c'est sûr qu'il y a toujours une différence entre les têtes parlantes, les médias, etc., et ce qu'on voit un peu dans le côté qu'on pourrait dire la majorité silencieuse. Puis moi, ce que j'observe aussi, c'est que, disons, chez les jeunes qui sont pas toujours à l'université, chez les jeunes qui pensent pas à la politique à tous les jours, il y a une forme d'attrait pour ça. Vous regardez, par exemple, des influenceurs québécois, des gens comme Olivier Primo, des gens comme Pierre Paul-Hus, des gens qui sont pas à parler politique à tous les jours. C'est quand même des gens qui se sont affichés dernièrement avec Pierre Poilievre. Puis ça, moi, bon, comme nerd de politique, qui est pas exactement dans cet univers-là, je regarde ça puis je me dis, OK, mais on dirait qu'il se passe quelque chose. Puis j'ai pas la prétention de tout comprendre, mais j'ai l'impression qu'il y a quand même un phénomène qui est peut-être pas sur le radar parce que c'est dans des endroits de la société, justement, où peut-être le radar médiatique est pas toujours orienté. Mais je pense qu'il y a quand même une espèce de courant de fond en ce moment qui est quand même assez intéressant.
Vous vous décrivez comme nerd de politique. Monsieur Poilievre doit adresser les délégués plus tard ce soir. Vous êtes en fait essayiste, vous étiez auparavant rédacteur des discours du premier ministre du Québec, François Legault. Évidemment, son discours ce soir est très attendu. Vous, qu'est-ce que vous espérez qu'il va dire ce soir? Qu'est-ce que vous espérez entendre de M. Poilievre?
Ben, écoutez, moi, je pense que si j'étais à sa place, j'essaierais de proposer, ça va être quoi la direction pour le parti sous Marc Carney. Parce que quelque chose qu'on lui a reproché, à tort ou à raison, depuis le début de l'élection, en fait, depuis la défaite de l'élection, c'est de dire, est-ce qu'il a suffisamment adapté son discours au moment présent depuis que, par exemple, Donald Trump occupe beaucoup d'espace dans l'espace médiatique, depuis que Marc Carney, s'est inscrit quand même en rupture avec Justin Trudeau sur certains thèmes. Fait que là, c'est de voir un peu, c'est quoi la proposition conservatrice en avant de la prochaine élection. Je pense qu'on est rendu au bout, ou si moi je le conseillais, je lui dirais, comment tu le vois pour la prochaine, c'est quoi la manière dont ton pitch un peu envers les électeurs va être capable d'évoluer pour capturer un peu le moment présent que les gens voient. Puis à ce moment-là, moi, c'est quelque chose que j'observe depuis longtemps. Puis bon, comme Québécois, encore une fois, quand on regarde la politique fédérale, des fois, on a une vision qui est un peu différente. Mais je pense que le Parti conservateur, c'est quand même notable. C'est un des rares partis dans le monde occidental qui n'est pas vu comme étant le parti patriotique. Le parti à droite, je veux dire. Parce que d'habitude, quand on pense au drapeau, etc., on se dit, OK, c'est la droite, c'est les conservateurs. Mais curieusement, depuis les années 80, en fait, depuis que Pierre Trudeau a un peu réinventé le Canada avec sa constitution, c'est davantage le Parti libéral qui va se draper dans le drapeau et tout. Et donc, je pense que ça explique un peu aussi le résultat de la dernière élection. Fait qu'à ce moment-là, moi, si j'étais au Parti conservateur, je leur dirais, c'est quoi votre pitch patriotique pour les Canadiens? Puis après, encore une fois, on a un État multinational, fait qu'on a le Québec, on a le Canada, mais comment vous êtes capable d'exprimer cette fierté-là aussi, alors que clairement, il y a cette demande-là face à un voisin du Sud qui se montre parfois belliqueux avec le Canada? Comment est-ce que vous pouvez avoir une vision conservatrice qui va rejoindre ce besoin-là d'affirmation, ce besoin de défense du Canada qu'on sent en ce moment?
Très rapidement, parce qu'il nous reste seulement à peu près 20 secondes, mais donc, est-ce que vous attendez vraiment à avoir un changement de cap de la part de Pierre Poilievre?
Bien, je pense qu'il va y avoir une réaffirmation de ses priorités, mais je pense que c'est vraiment une belle opportunité aussi pour aller au-delà de ça, parce que c'est un moment où justement tous les médias regardent, beaucoup de citoyens vont l'écouter, fait que c'est un moment pour aller peut-être au-delà de ce qu'on a dit par le passé pour innover puis montrer qu'est-ce qui s'en vient avec la prochaine élection.
On va devoir s'arrêter là-dessus, malheureusement. Étienne-Alexandre Beauregard, merci encore une fois d'avoir été venu ce soir.
Merci beaucoup, Marc-André.
Nicola Fairweather is Riding Association President for West Vancouver Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky Country in British Columbia. But you're saying this is your first convention that you're attending. What made you want to come to Calgary?
I think there's such a change right now in politics, and there's the movement after the last election with the Conservatives has really been growing, and I'm super excited to be here and learn more. It's all a learning process.
And you are going to hear from your leader tonight, Pierre Poilievre. What message do you think he's going to be giving to delegates, especially to some of the delegates here who might not be decided on how they want to cast their vote in that leadership review?
I'm hoping it's going to be one of uniting us together as a party, because we can have our fractions where we don't agree with things, but it's all about beating the Liberals, and I think we can do that under Pierre.
And do you think there's a certain number in terms of the percentage he needs to hit that would keep his leadership safe?
Well, let's hope he gets 100%, right? But yeah, I honestly, I don't really know. But I'm feeling from what I'm hearing that he's safe. From what I'm hearing the last few days, so yeah.
Okay, I want to talk because these conventions also deal with policy. They deal with how the party operates itself. You're involved in the party at a local level in British Columbia. You're Riding Association president. There's a lot of talk about how the last election campaign was handled in terms of how the party ran that campaign, in terms of how nominations were handled. What do you want to see the party learn from that last campaign and apply it to the next election whenever it comes?
Well, that's what we're hoping to elect new council members for, because I think they need to give a bit more trust to the riding associations that we can pick our delegates and allow our delegates to go and speak at debates.
Okay, last question for you is this. We've seen the Liberals under Mark Carney continuing to lead Conservatives in polls, but you're offering an optimistic message about your party. What do you think is it going to take for the Conservative message to resonate more with Canadians, perhaps get even to the Liberals or surpass the Liberals in terms of popular support?
To have the Liberals stop paying for the media in Canada, like that's why it's not getting out there, right? It's most of the media is Liberal because they get the money from the government. So yeah, I think we're going to have to try and find a new way to communicate because it's not going to be through mainstream TV.
Okay, Nicola, Fairweather, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Well, how can we be in Alberta covering any story without reaching out to Janet Brown, the woman behind Janet Brown Opinion Research? Hello to you, Janet.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Always happy to have you. Hey, listen, I want to begin with the speech tonight with Pierre Poilievre. Of course, that is the centerpiece of the second day of the Conservative National Convention. What do you think he needs to do or say in that speech before delegates cast their ballots this evening?
You know, funny enough, I don't think he has to say very much. I think the delegates are on his side. I think he's going to do very well tonight. Don't forget, this is a delegated convention, and what that means is each riding association chose who got to go to the convention and have voting status. And those people were cleared. They made sure that they were sending Poilievre loyalists to this meeting. Also, unlike when Erin O'Toole was leader of the party and had just come out of the loss of the 2021 election, you know, there were people that were creating campaigns to run against him, most notably Pierre Poilievre. So, you know, Erin O'Toole, he faced a membership base that saw other alternatives. There doesn't seem to be that alternative that's sort of brewing in the party right now. So if people have reservations with Poilievre, I think they're just going to sort of sit on their hands, vote for him, because whatever their reservations are, it seems to be an almost unanimous decision that he is still the Conservatives' best hope.
Okay, still the Conservatives' best hope, as you say, might be the conclusion people are drawing. But I'm wondering about the issues he may have to address, because while delegates were gathering here in Calgary, over in Ottawa, the First Ministers were meeting. And as that First Ministers meeting got underway, David Eby raised his concerns, his opposition to the Alberta separatism movement, that forced Danielle Smith to address it as well. Does Pierre Poilievre have to address that issue, do you think, considering that national unity seems to be evolving as an issue for every party leader between Alberta and Quebec right now?
Well, if he ignores this topic in his speech tonight, he really will be ignoring the elephant in the room. But at the same time, he may want to tread very lightly. My polling suggests that upwards of half of the people who voted for the Conservatives in Alberta in the last election, you know, upwards of half of them like the idea of Alberta separation. So he is speaking to a room where there's going to be mixed views on Alberta's future. But it will be the elephant in the room if he doesn't speak about it. He is, after all, an MP representing an Alberta riding. And he would love to just skip all of these contentious Alberta issues and say, well, I won't be running in Alberta in the future. But he represents Alberta now. He may very well be representing Alberta as an MP when Alberta goes to a separatist referendum. So it is the elephant in the room. Maybe he's going to walk through it gently in his speech tonight, but he's going to have to address it before he leaves Calgary.
Yeah, as you say, walk gently through this issue, but also I think fair to say walk gently with every issue going forward, because when you look at the numbers, and by all means share with what you find on this, amongst the base, Pierre Poilievre has strong support. But for Canadians who did not vote Conservative in the last election, they're not as positive about his leadership. Can he bridge that divide successfully? If he tries to bridge that divide, will he alienate the base that's so loyal to him right now, Janet?
Well, when Poilievre lost the federal election, and when he lost his own seat, he's had this path that he's had to sort of crawl along to reestablish himself as a legitimate contender for the role of prime minister. So he had to regain another seat in Alberta. Now he has to face his delegates at the convention. So he really had to go, back to ground zero. He had to sort of dig into the roots, make sure that an Alberta riding would elect him as MP, make sure that these delegates will re-elect him as leader of the PC, of the conservative, the federal Conservatives. Now, after he leaves Calgary, assuming he gets a good vote, assuming he secures his position as Conservative leader going forward, now he's got to turn his attention to the general electorate. And I think starting Monday, we are going to see a different tone out of Poilievre. He's going to feel free to talk to people beyond his base. He's had to do the hard work of securing his base. Assuming he does that successfully this weekend, Monday, he must start focusing outside of the base, trying to grow his base if he's ever going to have hope of winning the next election.
Yeah, you mentioned outside the base, and I have to say, when I look at the national polling numbers, it seems to suggest there is a percentage of Conservatives who are actually happy with Mark Carney right now. They're giving his performance a thumbs up. I'm wondering what you're seeing here in Alberta regarding Mark Carney, his approval rating here, and the type of added challenge that will create for Pierre Poilievre once everything is settled here in Calgary.
Well, I think if we had a federal election today, here in Alberta, the majority of seats would go to the Conservatives. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Albertans are unhappy with Carney. The memo of understanding he signed with Danielle Smith has gone over well. Albertans are praising the speech he gave in Davos as heartily as any Canadians are praising it. So I think a lot of Conservatives, a lot of people come to me very quietly and say, I'm a Conservative, I'd never vote Liberal, but I think Carney is doing an okay job. So, and also Carney has Alberta roots and people appreciate that. So, Albertans aren't hugely dissatisfied with Carney right now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, a bunch of seats would go Liberal in the next election.
Mm-hmm. So, quickly running out of time here, Janet, what are you watching out for in tonight's speech then?
Well, of course, I'm watching for tone. How confident is he that he's got his base secured? Is he throwing red meat to the base, or is he using this chance? He's going to be on national television. This speech tonight will be broadly seen outside of his base. Will he use this as an opportunity to speak to Canadians at large? If he's speaking to Canadians at large, I think that shows he's very confident about how he's going to fare in the vote. If he's still throwing red meat at the base, then he's probably wanting to make sure he secures that vote before he gets too controversial.
Okay, well, we are certainly watching, both you and I and people at home. Janet, always appreciate this. Next time we really have to be face-to-face, though, when I'm in Calgary.
Thank you.